Hi, my name is Andre Barker Jr. I am a figurative painter from Detroit, Michigan. Right now, I am a MFA candidate at Columbia College Chicago. My work is primarily about showing the Black experience through the lens of Afro-Surrealism to show the poetic weirdness of that experience and how uncanny it can be. And honestly, I can say that I am so happy to work with Unwoven on this project. So my starting art started when I went to Henry Ford Academy School for Creative Studies, and that school is connected to the College for Creative Studies. And at first, at that time, I was really drawing manga, anime, and cartoons until one of my professors told me that maybe I should start drawing from a reference, something more real. And that's when I started that switch. So switching over to painting, needs my expression, it really came from me wanting to capture a vibrancy, something more dramatic that I could never have done with drawing. And I feel like in the future, that's something I may go back to, but I feel like there's something about painting that I was able to capture what I wanted to capture all along. And that kind of opened up my creativity and what I wanted to do with my whole art career. For my work, really what I'm drawing from is just my experience, other Black stories that tell me that what they experience, and really like media. Still love cartoons. I still love anime, love video games, love movies and TV shows. So I look at those things and I figure out like how can I bring that into my work, and that what really inspires me when I'm thinking about when I'm creating. How can I use different stylistic choices in my work to make it different from what other Black creatives are doing? Since we're pretty much all talking about the same thing, I thought about a way, how can I continue this conversation but do it differently? It makes me see things from like a different lens. Now I see everything as like, oh, I would love to make this into a painting. Or how can I depict that in my practice? So it just makes me see things not clear, but through like a different lens. And finding inspiration with Afro-Surrealism that's done in media, with Jordan Peele and Donald Glover, I'm more so paying attention to the weirdness now that happens to us, more so than I ever did living in Detroit. And I think that just comes from the fact that Detroit is over 60% Black, so I never noticed that weirdness and that duality between a Black experience and what white people may experience every day. And then coming to Chicago, that really opened it up and made me see things differently because I experienced it instead of just hearing about it or seeing it on television. For me, the most fun has to be when I bring somebody in to do a photo shoot. I really love the connection that I have with my models because, in a sense, I'm not just trying to capture a static figure, I want to capture them. And having that conversation really helps. But another fun part is the clothes. Because I like to treat the Black and brown people in my pieces like delicately. I want to show them glowing underneath this symbolical spotlight. I want to make them look as good as possible so when they see themselves, they can be proud that they're in a painting. But with the clothes, I can be a lot more loose and use this wet on wet style like John Singer Sargent does, and add more texture. So it's not as precious, I can say. So that is very freeing for me to not have any constraints and just let the brushwork and the paint do what it do. For me, the Black body on canvas, it means visibility. You're able to see us in a space where for centuries or decades, we have been excluded from. So having a Black body on canvas or even on paper in some instances in my practice, it's just a sense of like, you can see us now, we belong here as well. Our stories are also meant to be told in these spaces, not just stories that depict white people. Our narrative is just as important. One of the biggest transformative responses that I had in my work has to have been when I was watching an anime called Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And in this anime, there's a scene between like the 15-minute mark where they show the characters and they have like a hard light on them from one side of their body. And I was always thinking about like, how can I depict light in different ways? Of course, there's chiaroscuro, that warm light and the deep shadow. But I thought about what about that invasive nature of like technology or neon lights that doesn't perfectly blend into the skin. It kind of sits on top in like this artificial way. And watching that anime, I saw this blue light on a person, and I was like, eureka moment, like that's the phone light. And that's something that I carried over into my pieces. And then thinking about other light sources, like how would a red light look on just laying on a body? And for that response, that really allows me to really think about how do I want the background to look as well. Because I want it to all be complementary. I don't want it to clash together. I want it to work in harmony. One of the most valuable critiques was when I was at Wayne State, and even though it was a harsh critique, my teacher told me that my work was outdated and uninteresting. And at that time, it sucked, and I second guessed this whole art career. I was like, "Eff it, I'm gonna be a firefighter. This isn't for me." But I feel like without that critique, it would not have allowed me to think more critically of like what I wanted for my practice and really work on my concepts a lot more. I feel like if that critique didn't happen and she didn't say it to me, even though it wasn't constructive criticism, it helped me move forward. And if it didn't, I don't know what I would be doing now. The one thing that I can say shows up most of my work is the wasp. Of course, you can say wasp or bee. Both are invasive species, but the wasp in particular stands for white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. The insect, they see other insects as lesser and they can attack and kill them. And I relate that to how racist people see black and brown people as lesser and they can attack and kill them both physically or mentally. And when thinking about those different symbolisms of my work, it allowed me to show a narrative in my piece without hitting people over the head with its meaning. So like whisper a meaning without people being confronted with something that they weren't ready for. For me, it means that I am in it. It's my story, it's my experience, even though it's a shared experience. So I feel like having myself in my pieces are important in some cases. And one of my pieces, Attack on the Night, which is heavily inspired by Artemisia Gentileschi's Judah of Slaying Holofernes, the only reason I included myself in that piece is because she included herself in it. And only in that piece, she was doing the attacking and she had help. In my piece, I decided to have me in there assisting someone else attacking. So in that sense, it's like, as an artist, I'm not going to be the one that can create the change. I'm just there assisting in a conversation that can hopefully lead to a change that our society is desperately in need of. In my pieces, I think space and time doesn't really matter because the black experience, once again, it's a shared experience and it happens all throughout every generation. I think it could exist in the past, it could exist in the present, of course, and hopefully not the far future, but the near future, definitely. So I think it can exist anywhere, in any time period, in any space, because this is an experience and a problem that's been happening to everyone for a very long time. So Afro, of course, I mean, it's black. It's a black experience, but it's a unique experience that not everyone deal with. And surrealism, that's that weirdness, that uncanniness that we deal with. Because black's Afro surrealism or black surrealism, that's so specific. It's a specific experience that I try to capture in my work. Whereas all normal surrealism or surrealist, their work is more dreamlike, or it's weird and more. It's more like monstrous. It has nightmares. It's not just based on reality. And because the black experience is so surreal in itself, it does not need to delve into dreams or nightmarish imagery or something overtly weird. Just existing in the space by itself is weird enough. Writings of Amir is strongly based off of my time at Columbia College Chicago, and when I was researching this idea of what is Afro-Surrealism, how do I want to depict it, what lighting techniques do I need to learn, and the alienating feeling of that. Of course, I looked at the past masters' work like Caravaggio and really strongly based my composition off of one of his pieces. And when looking at that, I thought about that quiet moment of somebody writing and researching, and I wanted to carry that over. How it feels for someone to put a spotlight on you and that you feel alone even though people are watching you. So in that piece, it's just a person sitting by himself working and paying attention to just his work and not the audience or even anything else around him, because there is nothing. For me at that time, and even now, all that matters is the work. So Attack on the Night is the first painting that I did officially that I took really seriously, because it wasn't for class, but that I really wanted to figure out a style and how do I want to communicate this experience. Attack on the Night, when I first saw the original piece by Artemisia Gentileschi, Judah Slaying Holofernes, it was two white women attacking Holofernes, killing him, slaying him. And when I saw that piece, I said, what if there were two black men attacking this embodiment of American racism? And that's when I started using the motif of like the wasp, and I wanted the head to be upside down because I personally, I'm scared of things, heads being upside down on the bodies. And I did not want to include any symbolism to the domestic terrorist group, the KKK. Instead, I wanted to show a white robe and have the head be disgusting wasp nest and decaying, so people won't feel any sympathy for the creature that's being attacked. And because of like the head shape of the wasp, I wanted it to be the shape of a cone, which my hand is pressing on in that piece. And yeah, that for me, that piece is one of my most powerful pieces of work, and I feel like without it, nothing else would have, none of my work would exist without. Unwoven for me means unraveling of something, of course, but to me, it's like unraveling a narrative, showing something that's unseen, that's just underneath the surface. And I think that's what my work really does. It shows something that everyone knows, that a lot of people experience, but also shows it in a different way, and that gives it a new light and a new breath. So you see me, I reached out to somebody, posted a picture on Instagram, and I was like, well, I want to paint you because I really love the lighting. And that's one of the few people who I reached out to that did not come to my studio. I just took it from Instagram. Thankfully, I got his permission. But that piece is strongly based off of the fact of that Black people deal with microaggressions and all these things every day. And seeing his nonchalant attitude in that piece shows like he doesn't care about microaggressions. In his glasses, there's a wasp laying on it. He doesn't care about that. He doesn't care about the swarm outside that you can't see but is reflected in the glasses. So that piece for me is really just about how we don't care about the microaggressions, how because they're so common in our everyday life, it stops affecting us. And that's both good and bad. It's bad that it's constantly happening, but it's good that it doesn't, you don't take it to heart all the time. Yeah. For me, I see myself as a visual storyteller. So when I think about writing or even animation or film, it makes me want to find different ways to combine that into my work. Like film with the drama, with the light, with animation, try to capture like some figures in motion, like they're doing something. And even with writing, how can I put a deep narrative in there that's not as loud as it could be, but just whispers to you, like it's the overall narrative of the piece that's not seen in a sense. I would say that persistence is key. Make sure that you work in the studio, that you have something special to you that connects to you, because I feel like having a personal connection to your work is what makes it, it elevates it, it makes it a lot better. You can go out, it's easier to talk about if you have that connection as well. So work in the studio, keep working, keep trying, and then you can go out and show your work to the world. The last thing you want to do is not have anything to show and you're trying to get people interested in what you're doing. So it all starts in the studio.